Okay, so get this. You sent us this report, right?
Yeah.
About a land dispute in the DRC.
Okay.
It involves this palm oil company, PHC,
Uh-huh.
formerly called Feronia.
Right.
But it's not just the company, it's also local communities. And even international development banks are wrapped up in it.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, this deep dive is going to get pretty interesting, I think.
Sounds like it.
We're talking accusations of land grabs, human rights abuses,
Mm-hmm.
even like straight up organized palm oil theft.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
This report is really something.
So where is this report coming from?
Well, it's from this independent complaints mechanism.
What's that?
They call it an ICM.
Okay.
And basically, it's like a neutral third party
I see.
that they brought in to help resolve this dispute.
So they're like mediators.
Exactly.
Cool.
And they went all in doing site visits, interviews.
Oh, wow.
They even facilitated mediation sessions.
That's impressive.
Oh, yeah.
So they really dug deep into this.
They did. This report, it walks us through everything from the initial complaint filed back in 2018
Mm-hmm.
by communities in these two plantation areas, Bateka and Likutu,
Okay.
all the way to like the agreements reached in 2024.
And those communities were represented by an NGO.
Right. They were represented by RAORDC.
Okay, got it.
So the ICM, it's not about like
Yeah.
pointing fingers. It's
Mhm.
about finding solutions.
Right.
And it really highlights the importance of talking,
Hmm.
being transparent, working together.
Makes sense.
Especially when you're dealing with, complicated land rights issues.
Yeah. Good.
Like we have in this case.
So let's paint a picture for the listeners.
Okay.
You have PHC,
Mm-hmm.
this big palm oil company in the DRC.
Right.
And then they have the communities living around their plantations.
Right.
And those communities are saying, hold on, something's not right.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just like
Yeah.
claiming ownership of the land,
So what were their concerns specifically?
Well, they questioned the legitimacy of PHC's land titles.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
were they properly consulted about how the land was being used? And some folks, they felt like they were being left out
Yeah.
of decisions that directly affected their lives,
That makes sense.
their livelihoods.
It's about feeling like your voice matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like having a say in what happens on your own land.
Exactly.
And to make things worse.
Uh-oh.
The complaints also included some pretty serious allegations.
What kind of allegations?
Well, they were saying that there was harassment,
Mhm.
the physical abuse,
Oh, wow.
and allegedly this was happening at the hands of PHC's security guards.
Oh, no.
And even, get this, and told him the local police.
Really?
Yeah, so it wasn't just about property lines anymore.
Wow.
This was about, like, personal safety
Yeah.
and basic human rights.
That's serious.
Yeah,
So how did these escalate to this point?
I know, right?
Clearly, something went wrong with communication.
Well, communication and trust, they had completely broken down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Between PHC and the communities.
Right.
And when issues just fester,
Mhm.
like for years without being addressed,
Yeah,
tensions, they just naturally rise, don't they?
definitely. So getting everyone to sit down and talk,
Mm-hmm.
I bet that wasn't easy.
Oh, no, not at all.
There were delays, years of delays.
What caused the delays?
Well, first, there was a big corporate restructuring within PHC.
Oh, okay.
And that just threw everything off.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as if things weren't complicated enough already,
Yeah.
the COVID-19 pandemic hit.
Oh, wow.
And everything came to a standstill.
Right. So
Was
imagine trying to build trust, have
Yeah.
these open conversations
Yeah.
when you can't even meet face to face.
That's tough.
It was tough.
Yeah.
But thankfully, the ICM, they didn't give up. They
Wow.
understood that any agreement, it wouldn't really stick
Mhm.
unless it had broad community support.
Right. So it wasn't enough to just hear from the original complainants.
Exactly.
They needed to bring more people to the table.
They did, and it's a crucial point that's often overlooked in these types of situations. If you just focus on like a small vocal group,
Yeah,
you miss crucial perspectives,
Yeah. definitely.
The ICM, they wanted everyone to have a seat at the table.
I like that.
Even those who maybe hadn't initially filed a complaint.
Yeah, that's a good approach.
I think of it like making a stew.
Okay.
If you only use one ingredient,
Hmm.
it won't be very flavorful, right?
Right.
You need a variety to make it like
Yeah,
rich and satisfying.
a good analogy.
And the ICM,
Yeah.
they didn't just like throw everyone together and hope for the best.
Right.
They actually provided training
Oh, cool.
on mediation techniques
So all the participants.
to all the participants. So they
Awesome.
had the tools, a common language for resolving conflict.
Instead of talking past each other.
Exact, yeah.
Yeah.
So after years of delays and all that preparation,
Yeah.
we finally arrive at 2023 where separate mediation sessions were held
For both.
for both Bateka and Likutu.
Gotcha.
And get this, the governor of each province was actually involved.
Wow.
Which shows just how seriously they were taking this whole thing.
It adds legitimacy to the process.
It really does.
Yeah.
Like, having the principal step into a classroom squabble,
Right.
it raises the stakes.
So what were some of the key issues they addressed?
Well, the most contentious one, without a doubt,
Yeah.
was the issue of the land.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, in both Buteyko and Lekutu,
Mm-hmm.
the communities were deeply concerned about the boundaries
At the plantation.
of PHC's plantations. Yeah.
Right.
They were claiming that PHC had encroached on their land,
Oh, I see.
which restricted their access to like essential resources
Right.
and disrupted their traditional ways of life.
That's a big deal.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about abstract legal claims.
Right.
This was about their livelihoods, their ability to farm, to fish,
Yeah.
to gather resources from the forest.
Things that are like fundamental to their survival.
Absolutely. And to their cultural identity.
Right.
Imagine like your family had fished in a certain river for generations.
And then suddenly you're told you no longer have access.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's a very personal and emotional issue.
So to address these concerns, they agreed to establish land commissions
Okay.
in both locations.
So who was on these commissions?
Well, they were made up of representatives from the communities, obviously
Oh.
representatives from PHC,
Okay.
the cadastre offices. Yeah, those are
Cadastres.
like the land registry folks.
I see.
And even a representative from each governor's office.
Wow, so like a team of detectives
Exactly.
trying to figure out the land boundaries
Mhm.
and make sure everything was documented properly.
Exactly. It was all about transparency.
Right.
Building trust by like involving all stakeholders.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now in Buteyko,
Yeah.
the communities, they initially demanded
Yeah.
this huge amount,
How much?
288 million euros
Wow, that's a lot.
in financial compensation.
Okay.
They claim that this was based on funds that PHC had received
Hmm.
from development banks,
Interesting.
but they couldn't provide any evidence to support their claim.
Oh, wow.
So the lack of evidence
Yeah.
ultimately led the communities to drop their demand. So it's a reminder
Mm-hmm.
that while, passion is essential in these situations, solid evidence is also crucial
Right.
to actually achieving a favorable outcome.
I see.
Now let's talk about another major concern
Mm-hmm.
that the communities raised.
What was that?
Their participation
Oh, you're right.
in decisions that impacted their lives.
Okay.
So in both Buteyko and Lekutu,
Yeah.
people felt like they were being left out of PHC's activities,
I see. And
decisions. They wanted more transparency and a voice in the
They
process.
essentially wanted to be treated as partners,
Yes,
not just bystanders.
exactly.
So how did they address that?
Well, both parties agreed to revitalize existing communication channels,
Okay.
specifically the conflict management committees
Mm-hmm.
and the social clauses monitoring committees.
So like structured platforms
Yes.
for dialogue
Yes.
and collaboration.
So instead of waiting for things to boil over,
Yeah.
they have a way to raise concerns early
Mm-hmm.
and address them proactively.
So a shift from reactive to proactive.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, remember those allegations of physical abuse?
Yeah, the ones by PHC security and police.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That issue was also brought to the table during the mediation sessions.
Okay.
And PHC, they committed to investigating those allegations
Oh, good.
and potentially working to release
Mm-hmm.
anyone who had been unfairly detained.
So acknowledging potential harms
Mm-hmm.
and showing a commitment to human rights,
Exactly.
it's important for them to ensure that their security operations
Right.
respect the rights of the communities.
Yeah. Even if PHC wasn't directly involved
Mm-hmm.
in the alleged abuses.
It sets a clear standard
It does.
that this type of behavior won't be tolerated.
Right. They're taking action to address it.
But PHC also had their own grievances, right?
Oh, yeah.
What were those?
They were dealing with a lot of theft
Theft of what?
of palm oil.
Oh, wow.
Organized theft of palm
That's
oil.
not a problem.
A big problem
Yeah.
that was affecting their production.
Right.
It shows that it wasn't a simple situation like
Mhm.
black and white. It wasn't just a corporation taking advantage of communities.
Right.
There were complex issues of crime
Mm-hmm.
and economic hardships
That needed to be addressed.
that needed to be addressed as well.
So how did they tackle that?
They came up with this multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
First, they were going to launch awareness campaigns in the communities.
To educate people about the theft.
Exactly, about the consequences. And
Okay.
second, they were going to set up canteens
Canteens. What
Mhm.
for?
so locals could buy palm oil and other essential goods
Okay.
at affordable prices.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Reduce the incentive to steal.
So addressing economic hardship
Uh-huh.
to prevent crime?
Exactly.
All right.
Aiming for a win-win.
Yeah.
PHC reduces theft.
Uh-huh.
The communities have access to essential goods.
Definitely a win-win.
And they didn't stop there.
No.
PHC also committed to supporting
Yeah.
income-generating activities
Oh, wow.
for community members,
Right.
further addressing those economic concerns.
So a lot of focus on the economics.
Yeah, and on top of that,
Mhm.
community leaders agreed to help identify those responsible for the theft.
Oh, so a real collaborative approach.
A real shift towards cooperation.
Yeah,
It was like they were finally saying, we're in this together.
I like that.
And we need to work together to create a better future.
That's great.
For
A
everyone.
good start.
But let's not forget about the communities wanting more involvement.
Oh, right. In PHC social projects.
Yes,
They felt like those were imposed on them
they did.
without their input.
They wanted to be empowered,
Mm-hmm.
not just like
Right.
recipients of handouts.
Right.
They wanted to be involved in selecting and monitoring the initiatives.
To make sure they met the community's needs.
Exactly.
So what happened
PHC responded by agreeing to share project timelines.
with the communities?
Yeah.
Okay.
And to involve them in selecting and monitoring those initiatives.
So a more participatory model.
Exactly. And to make sure that this newfound spirit of collaboration,
Mhm.
didn't just fizzle out,
Right.
they agreed to establish permanent consultation committees
Okay.
in both Buteyko and Lakutu.
So these committees,
Yeah.
they would meet regularly
Yes.
to keep the conversation going?
To review progress,
Okay.
discuss emerging issues,
Right.
and just generally work together to build a stronger relationship.
So like safeguards for the future?
Exactly.
To ensure the agreements are actually implemented.
And these committees,
Yeah.
they weren't just left to figure things out on their own.
Okay.
The first meetings were scheduled for August 2024.
Oh, okay.
And the ICM committed to participating.
So providing support.
Yeah, to get them off on the right foot.
I see. So they weren't just going to leave them with a handshake
Exactly.
and good intentions.
They were invested
Yeah.
in seeing this through.
That's reassuring.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that there's someone there
Mm-hmm.
to help navigate those initial bumps in the road
Right.
and to ensure accountability.
Makes sense.
So the stage is set, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
We've got these consultation committees ready to meet yet. The community's eager to see if PHC will deliver
Right.
on those promises of support.
Yeah.
And the ICM is watching closely.
It all comes down to whether it works.
The question is, did it all work?
Did this fragile piece hold up?
Or did it all crumble?
Good question.
We'll have to see.
I'm intrigued.
Me too. It's easy to get lost in all the details of these negotiations.
Yeah.
But I keep thinking about that song
Oh, yeah.
from the community in Buteyko.
Yeah.
It was powerful.
It really was.
Even when all the legalities and stuff, it reminds you that we're dealing with real people.
Real people with real hopes and fears.
Right, exactly.
And a connection to their land.
Yeah, their land.
That's so important.
Okay, but let's get back to those 2024 meetings
Right.
where the land commissions were supposed to report back
Right.
and the communities, they were ready with their requests.
It felt like a big moment.
Make or break.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's start with Buteyko,
Okay.
the Cadastre offices.
Okay, the land registry folks.
Yeah, they confirmed that PHC's land titles,
Yeah.
all 6,543 hectares,
Wow.
they were officially recognized.
by the DRC government.
Yeah. And PHC had been paying their royalties.
Like they were supposed to?
So their paperwork seemed to check out
So did they find any evidence of those boundary overruns?
that the communities were worried about.
Yeah.
Well, this is where it gets interesting.
Okay, tell me.
The cadastry officials, they said
Yeah.
that they couldn't compare PHC's current titles.
Which were from 2015.
Yeah.
Okay.
With any older titles.
And why not?
Because, get this,
With the
they
di-
didn't have records of the pre-2015 titles.
Wait, no records.
I know, right?
You'd think something that important would be meticulously documented.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's actually more common than you might think.
Oh, really?
Especially in regions with, conflict or instability.
Makes sense.
Record keeping, it often takes a back seat
Yeah.
to more immediate concerns. So PHC's 2015 titles, they were valid.
Mm-hmm.
But the question of those original boundaries,
Right.
whether they were established fairly
Yeah.
with the community's consent.
It remained unanswered.
Yeah, unanswered.
So mystery solved, but not really.
Right.
There's a lingering question mark
Lingering question.
over that initial acquisition.
Did they find anything more definitive in Lakutu?
Not quite.
Oh.
The Lakutu Cadastral Report
Yeah.
didn't even specify the total area of PHT's plantation there.
Really?
Just said it was approximately 63,000 hectares.
That's so vague.
A bit vague, yeah.
But they did confirm
Yeah.
that PHC held the official titles
Okay.
and was paying their loyalties.
So again,
Again, legitimate.
the current titles were legitimate.
But did they find anything
Yeah.
to support the community's claims?
The PHC was operating beyond those boundaries.
Right.
They didn't.
Okay. Oh, wow.
The report actually stated
Okay.
that they observed no instances
Uh,
of PHC exceeding their land boundaries.
in any of those 7 groupments?
Those are like local administrative units?
Yeah, where PHC was operating.
Okay, so on paper,
Yeah.
Looks like PHC was in the clear.
In both Bateka and Lakota.
Yeah.
But let's be real, the communities, they were really concerned about their land.
Yeah.
Do you think they just accepted those findings?
Well, this is where the trust-building work of the ICM comes in.
Okay.
Remember, the communities, they had invested a lot in this process.
Yes, they had participated.
They learned about mediation.
Those training sessions.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were present at all the meetings.
So even though the outcome wasn't what they hoped for,
Yeah.
they still trusted the process
They did.
enough to keep going.
And here's the thing.
Yeah.
They didn't reject the reports outright.
Okay.
They actually agreed on a pretty pragmatic approach.
What did they do?
The community said,
Yeah.
okay, we'll go back and talk to our people
Okay.
and come up with a list of requests for PHC.
Interesting.
These requests, they said,
Mm-hmm.
they would be their way of addressing any lingering concerns.
Okay.
And getting something tangible in return
Oh, I see.
for that unresolved historical aspect of the land issue.
That's a mature response.
It is.
Instead of dwelling on the past, they focused on the present and the future.
Exactly.
Like they were saying, look, we might have disagreement about the past,
Yeah.
but we're ready to move forward.
If you work with us,
and address our needs.
we're willing to put those grievances aside.
It really tested PHC's commitment to partnership.
For sure.
So what were those requests?
What were they asking for?
Were they looking for, like, financial compensation?
Specific projects, maybe.
It's something else.
The report doesn't give specific details,
Oh, okay.
but it does emphasize
Yeah.
that the requests were focused on addressing community needs
Okay.
for the common good.
So they weren't just looking for individual payouts.
Right.
They were thinking bigger.
Yeah, think about the whole community.
This could be anything. From investments in school,
Sure.
support for local businesses, agriculture, who knows?
Maybe training programs,
Scholarships.
a community development fund,
Right. So many possibilities.
a lot of options.
And in return for this support,
Yeah.
the communities agreed to acknowledge
PHC's land titles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and work with the company.
Sounds like a win-win.
It does.
They recognize that PHC wasn't going anywhere
Right.
and that fighting over the past wouldn't help.
So they made the best of the situation.
Exactly.
And worked together.
To create a better future.
And PHC agreed.
They agreed to consider the requests
Seriously.
and present an implementation plan.
Wow.
And all of that would be discussed
Yes.
through those permanent consultation committees.
It always comes back to those committees.
They're the key.
But there was one thing in Lakota.
Oh, yeah.
Remember how the cadastre report was vague?
About the total area?
About the total area of the plantation.
Right, they only had an approximate figure.
Right.
And they recommended a more precise measurement
Everyone agreed.
to avoid future confusion.
Yeah, to avoid future disputes.
They wanted clarity.
So the cadastre officials,
Yeah.
they would go back to Lakota
Okay.
and do a thorough survey
And mark the boundaries.
with those boundary stones.
It's all about transparency.
Yeah, and clarity.
For building trust.
It shows they're thinking long term.
Preventing conflicts down the road.
So by the end of those meetings, they had clarity on the land titles,
Right.
a process for addressing the grievances,
And those committees.
to keep the dialogue going.
Oh, what progress.
But the question is,
Yeah.
did it actually lead to a more harmonious relationship
Did the agreements hold up?
when the ICM stepped back?
That's the big question.
And to answer that,
We need to look at what happened next.
did those communities get the support they were promised?
Did those committees work?
Did that cooperation last?
We need to find out.
Okay, so we're back.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling the tension. Like,
For a little bit.
what happened next?
Right.
We left off with those committees
Yeah.
gearing up for their first meetings.
Back in August 2024.
The communities had their list of requests.
Right.
PHC had promised to respond.
With a concrete plan.
And the ICM.
The watchful guardian.
Yeah, making sure everyone stay on track.
So did it work?
Did this whole collaborative problem-solving thing actually work?
Well, the ICM report,
Yeah.
it mostly focuses on the time leading up to those meetings.
Oh, okay.
But we do get some hints about what happened next.
Get us a little taste.
Yeah, it's like a sneak peek at the next chapter.
I know, right?
Of a really good book.
Don't leave us hanging.
I know, but...
Okay, let's focus on what we do know.
All right.
The ICM,
Yeah.
they were going to be at those first meetings.
Right.
And they were committed to monitoring the agreements.
Through site visits and reports.
So they weren't messing around.
No, they were in it for the long haul.
They knew this wasn't a quick fix, right?
It takes time to build trust.
And effort.
Consistent effort.
It's like tending a garden.
Yeah, good analogy.
You can't just plant the seeds and walk away.
Right, you have to nurture them.
So what were those early signs like?
Did PHC actually deliver?
Did those committees actually work?
Or did they just fall apart?
The report doesn't give us a clear answer,
It doesn't.
but there are some promising signs.
Okay, like what?
Well, remember that community song in Bateka?
Oh yeah, during the final meeting.
That was spontaneous.
It really was.
And it felt like a real shift in the relationship.
A willingness to move forward.
Together.
It's like they finally saw each other as allies.
Not enemies.
Yeah, and that shared purpose. And everyone participated in the process.
Right. They all agreed to the outcomes.
It shows they felt ownership.
Like they had a voice.
Exactly.
And the agreements, they addressed the core issues.
Not just the symptoms.
Yeah, communication, transparency, ongoing dialogue.
Like they were saying, let's fix the system.
So these problems don't keep happening.
A proactive approach.
Right, but building trust takes time.
It does.
Especially when there's a history of broken promises.
So what made the ICM think this time would be different?
Were they being naive?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
They acknowledged the challenges.
Yeah.
But they also highlighted key factors.
Which gave them hope.
Yeah, their continued involvement was one.
They weren't just mediators. They were facilitated of long-term change.
They were invested in seeing this through.
Not just walking away.
Their presence meant accountability.
Yeah, like someone was watching.
To make sure the agreements weren't just words.
Like a personal trainer.
Ooh, I like that.
Keeping everyone motivated.
That's a good one.
Celebrating the successes.
Yeah, that's the ICM.
I feel hopeful.
Me too.
But I still want to know more.
I know.
What happened at those later meetings?
Yeah, what about those community requests?
Did the committees work?
Did they create positive change?
Unfortunately, that's where the report ends.
It does.
But it leaves us with a lot to think about.
It really does.
This case may have been about a single palm oil plantation.
But it touches on so much more.
The responsibilities of corporations.
The impact on communities.
The role of those development banks.
The power of dialogue.
It's a reminder that even small events can have huge consequences.
And raise ethical questions.
We have to stay informed.
Engaged about what's happening in the world.
This deep dive, it gave us a lot to think about.
It did.
But ultimately, it's up to each of us to decide
what role we want to play
in creating a better future.
A more sustainable future.
And it starts with awareness.
Understand
asking tough questions.
So keep diving deep.
Stay curious.
And we'll see you on the next episode
of The Deep Dive.